Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Basketball Banter Show. Thank you for joining us today. And today I got another special guest with me, a fellow colleague of mine at LakersNation.com, Sean Davis. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Gonna be fun.
Yeah, and today we're just going to be talking about some Lakers stuff going on. Anthony Irwin, fellow guest here on the show, released a piece last night detailing how he thinks the Lakers, according to his sources, are zeroing in on JJ Redick, who is a bit of a polarizing piece on Lakers Twitter right now, as LA's looking for a new head coach after letting go of Darvin Ham, and not overall just looking at the totality of the coaching market, not a very enticing market, all things considered, as the Lakers. Heading into the search, we're looking for experienced coaches and a coach with championship experience. He had that with Coach Bud, but now he's in Phoenix at this point in time. So, not many options, and the Lakers are kind of left with basically veteran assistant coaches who have yet to get an official head coaching job at this point in time. So, overall, not a very enticing market, but there are some pretty interesting candidates out there. Personally, my number one was David Adelman, and then Kenny Atkinson was kind of in there as well. But I kind of expressed on last episode how I was wary of JJ Redick, as I know a lot of people, uh, especially on Twitter, have expressed some worry about JJ. Obviously, not having experience, let alone as an assistant coach either, and especially in a high pressure job like the Lakers, who are trying to cash in on another championship with assuming 2 years of LeBron left. So, just overall, Sean, what are your thoughts on JJ Redick? I know there's a lot of smoke around him right now, and personally, from my perspective, it looks like it's his job to lose. And feel like whenever this interviewing process is over, I feel like JJ Redick's assumingly going to be the head coach of the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, for starters, I want to give JJ some credit because I by no means don't think that he's not like a smart dude. I
Mhm.
do think he's a smart basketball mind, simply because like you don't play in the league at the level that he played at for the amount of time that he did that long without being a smart player, and then stuff he does on broadcasts, podcasts, etc. I think he is a brilliant mind. Um, I guess really my concern, and people assume that I don't want JJ because of the first time I coached thing, where if you look back at both of the two Lakers coaching cycles since I've been covering the team, I favored rookie head coaches.
Mhm.
The thing with JJ is, like you mentioned, just absolutely no coaching experience at all, which is where I'm like, yeah, I'd rather not. And why that's so important is, and why it's completely different than the first time I coached him. While you just have no clue what he's good at, like at all,
Mhm.
right? Where
Yeah.
I hate how the NBA handles their assistant coaches and like the responsibility stuff like that. What I mean by that is, I don't know. So I'm a Chargers fan, right? So that's probably the worst example. I love the Seahawks example, right? So if I'm a Seahawks fan and I'm covering the team, and they fire Pete Carroll last offseason, I'm like, damn, okay, who's gonna be our next head coach? And you see this guy named Mike McDonald gets brought in, and he's the new head coach. Huh? If I'm a fan or covering the team and I want to know more about Mike McDonald, oh, I just have to go look, and he was the defensive coordinator for the Ravens last season. And then now I know, as a fan or as an analyst, I can go watch and study the Ravens defense to see, oh, okay, this is kind of the idea that we're gonna have here. And in the NBA, it's so much harder to get to to that point where it's like, oh, David Allen is the offensive coordinator for the Denver Nuggets. And they don't have the official title, but that's pseudo what his job is, right? He is the offensive coordinator for the Denver Nuggets. It it costs an arm and a leg to to find out that information.
Yeah.
The NFL, it's, oh, okay, I go to this team's roster in et cetera, et cetera. Not that hard. Um, so I think with JJ, you just have no clue whatsoever what he's good at. And that level of uncertainty is what makes him arguably the biggest, highest ceiling dude, because there's absolutely no idea whatsoever, while also being the biggest floor because again, you have no idea what he is. Like he can completely bomb out for you. So I have kind of accepted the fact that he is going to be the next head coach. I hope I'm
Mhm.
wrong because I do have Adam and a couple of the guys ranked more favorably over JJ Redick, but I think it's JJ's job to lose, like you said. Although the longer this drags out, the more I'm like, oh, okay, maybe Adelman and some of these other dudes that might still be coaching still have an opportunity and a realistic shot at this. Whereas if JJ, I feel like if something doesn't happen within the next week, then like Friday almost, I would say, oh, okay, maybe Adelman does have a real shot at this.
All right, and then building off of JJ Redick from a coaching perspective, what do you think the Lakers need to do, and JJ, frankly, for himself, needs to do to kind of make him hit the ground running in a sense? Because obviously the Lakers don't have a lot of time. So, what do you think from Redick himself and just the Lakers as an organization need to do to get JJ in the best position possible?
I think they need to try to surround JJ with a quality staff. That's obviously super super important to me. If you do go the JJ Redick route, so much so to the point that I've talked about, if JJ is the ultimate guy in the Shams report or the Woj bomb or whatever, as they simultaneously say, "Hey, the Lakers are hiring JJ Redick," I almost want them to say at the same time, and this is going to be their head assist. Like they already have
Mhm.
a plan in mind because that's another reason I would be a little bit more skeptical. Is like, where does JJ Redick pull from in terms of like how do you build a staff? A fun option would be like a Stan Van Gundy as an assistant. I wouldn't mind that. Don't want Stan as the head, but like if you can pull in Stan Van Gundy to be one of the veteran voices on the bench as an assistant, a smart basketball mind, I think that would be fun. Um, that's something I would really really appreciate from the organization standpoint. And then with JJ, I think it's so important in terms of like giving the fan base some confidence that during his introductory press conference, he kind of shed some light on what makes him a qualified candidate. And what I mean by that is like not from the standpoint of I don't want him to say, well, I played the game of basketball for X amount of years. I know the game really, really well. I'm cool with LeBron. Like, no, do not do that. Like, say, hey, I think you don't even have to go super like in depth, but be like, hey, look, I think with the talent that we have on the roster, I'd be really interested in doing XYZ things from a schematic standpoint potentially. And I'm very excited to get collaborative feedback from our best players, and we'll see where we can build from on that. Like, I think that's a great media tactic to where, oh, like, okay, like, cool, this guy actually has a plan where in all reality, he could have no idea what he's doing. But like that could just give the fan base some confidence that, okay, this guy has some sort of a plan and he's going to enact on it. And ultimately, I think no matter who they hire, there's always going to be some level of skepticism until the ball tips off in October for preseason and really for the regular season and stuff like that. And a couple of weeks go by, things of that nature. So there's a lot of question marks for sure around JJ, but those are, I guess, a couple of things from both advantage points that they could do to help themselves out.
Yeah, very good points. And then kind of just want to play devil's advocate here. I know when Frank was head coach, the Lakers front office was kind of hell bent on building the staff around Vogel, not letting him choose his staff. And then they kind of took a step back when Darvin Ham came through and they let him build his staff and frankly didn't have any experienced assistants around him. And that kind of proved to be a downfall in Ham's tenure. What do you think the Lakers do with potentially Redick being the head coach? Do you think the Lakers should have a little bit of input on what kind of experienced assistants they should have on the staff, or do you trust JJ to kind of assemble a more experienced staff in comparison to what Darvin did?
I think if JJ does get the job, I expect almost, or I want to expect the Lakers to have a big hand in who he has on his staff. And it really just comes down to, like I said, like where does he pull from, right? Where honestly, the Darvin thing is a bit interesting, where like it's justified why like he was able to pick his staff. And maybe the front office just said, "Hey, look, we want to recommend these guys or whatever." But like typically, that is like a decision that is left up to the head coach, and that's I think one of the things that got wrong with the Frank hiring, and one of the reasons why they actually missed out on Ty. Obviously, he had the money and like the length of the contract. Because if I refresh my memory, I think they wanted to match Ty Lue's deal with LeBron's deal, which was
Yes.
freaking dumb. But another thing along that lines, if I recall correctly, they wanted to help pick Ty's staff, and Ty was like, absolutely
Yeah.
not. So they try to correct that wrong with Darvin, but Darvin, it didn't go the way you wanted it Um, to the point where if you bring in Adelman or you bring in Mike Nori, or you bring in one of these other dudes that are experienced assistant coaches, I would still almost anticipate them to say, all right, cool, here, build out your staff or whatever. We might give our input here and there, but go ahead and build it out because they have more resources to pull from. And I'm less concerned about their ability to put together a capable staff. Where with JJ, I think Stan is like I said, within his wheelhouse. Like, okay, realistic option that can come in and really, really contribute. Outside of that, I'm like, yeah, where does JJ really pull from?
Yeah.
So that yeah, I would expect the Lakers front office to have a big hand in picking the staff or JJ.
Yeah, it'll definitely be something to monitor for sure. And assuming if JJ gets the job, will definitely be interesting to see how that staff comes together. So definitely going to be an interesting summer. And then kind of building off of that once they come to a decision with their head coaching search, the direction of where the Lakers should go. I know obviously the Lakers always want their stars, especially fans. I know the past summer, fans wanted to keep the team together coming off a Western Conference Finals appearance. And I know I'm tired of hearing the word, but continuity was something that Rob Pelinka and the whole front office clamored about heading into the 23-24 season. And ultimately, injuries kind of limited that. And then Darvin Ham experimenting a little too much in the beginning part of the season with starting lineups and rotations and things of that nature. So overall, kind of an underwhelming season. You run into the defending champs where ultimately shot yourselves in the foot in that series. You definitely had multiple chances to steal games and let alone just at least make it like a 6 game series in itself. But unfortunately, you get gentlemen swept, and that just results into irrational Laker fans just talking about blow it up, bring in a third star, or there's also fans that still want to keep this team together. They believe that LA is not too far off of contending in the Western Conference, and admittedly, it's going to get even harder next year with Houston assumingly going to improve off of their season. San Antonio, depending on the moves that they make. Memphis, they're probably going to be a lot more healthier, you would think, heading into next season. So it's going to get even more challenging. So, from your perspective, where do you stand on if the Lakers should just, again, make changes around the margins? I know that was kind of hypocritical what they did at the deadline. They didn't want to make marginal moves, but or the 3 star model once again. Obviously, went south the first time they did that. So I know Anthony Irwin, when he was on, he talked about just not blowing it all up for a star and just keeping the depth intact while just making some roster changes and moving all of the draft picks that they have, which are 3, I believe, that become
Come draft
available.
night.
Yeah, draft night. So overall, what are your thoughts on where the Lakers should go to improve the roster?
So my question when we talk third star is who's the third star? That's I think my automatic first question. Um, if it's Donovan Mitchell, I think you go all in, right? I think
Okay.
Donovan Mitchell. I'm getting nodded as this is related. I get nodded as the Trey Young like stan or whatever. I just honestly think Trey Young is super freaking underrated and
Mm,
to talk about. I've had people in my mentions tell me D'Angelo Russell is like trading for Trey Young is only a marginal upgrade over D'Lo. I'm like, all right, bud, like, go watch basketball, please, and then come back and talk to me about that. Um, but with all that being said, I have said on the record, and this just completely gets ignored, that Donovan Mitchell is the better fit with LeBron and AD's timeline because you don't have the off ball concerns with
Mhm.
Donovan Mitchell, where he can play off the ball and be effective. He isn't the exact defensive, just I don't even know what the word liability. There we go. That was the word I was trying to find. It's not the exact defensive liability that Trae Young is. Not the playmaker that Trae Young is either, right? But I think his concerns are masked a little bit more by having Braun and AD with them, whereas Trae, I think his concerns could get blown up a bit more. But I think Trae does have a lot of great skills and qualities that I think we continue to just gloss over. So the third star thing, it depends on who it is.
Mhm.
Trey, I would probably ultimately say yeah, because just the talent, right? And then post Braun, which if we're being realistic, we're talking maybe 2 years, right? So very much near, like you're in that window of okay, Braun is going to leave probably in 2 years, so just call it a quits. Um, Trey, in my opinion, at least, if he's your, you know, dominant ball handler that can score, playmaker, set the table for everybody. I think him and AD could work in the future. Um, so I guess it really just depends, right? But the thing I always come back to when we go the depth route is I think, and maybe this is the point you're trying to get with Anthony. I think regardless, the Lakers are going to lose all three of their draft picks this summer, right? Meaning, like, and by lose, I mean like using me in a trade, right?
Mhm.
So that's where it becomes interesting to me because if we go, okay, cool, let's go the depth route. The problem with that is, in my opinion, at least, and this is, I guess, very similar problem with the star model, is I just still think you're going to run out of opportunity to get moves done. Because if you want a high quality role player, right, that's going to cost you 2 first round picks probably,
Yeah.
depending on the role player is. And then it's like, shoot, okay, now what? And then if you want to start packaging your salaries too, so we're talking about I don't know, if we want a $20 million role player, you're automatically talking about trading Rui
Mhm.
just because of salary, right? Or if you're talking about a couple of really high quality role players. Okay, you're immediately talking about then Rui. And if you want to try to keep Austin, cool. Now we're talking about Gabe. And to make a team take Gabe, you probably have to overpay to do it. So I just think you run into some problems with both options. Obviously, the problem if you go 3 stars, you're in some ways taking your depth. Where if you go the depth route, I think the depth route kind of gets propped up too much because I don't think when we say, hey, let's go get more depth, like going to get more depth, we're talking about really realistically speaking, doing a 2v2 swap. Like you're just swapping out 2 players. Now, those 2 players you might be getting in might be better fits for the roster, which is important. I don't want to like undermine the importance of that. But I think when we talk about depth, when people talk about let's add more depth to this team, I think they're saying, hey, let's add depth to the team, but kind of sort of keep the team that's like basically already here. When in reality, that's just not realistic. So I don't know. I don't really know what direction they should go, but I do know this. I think they have to bat 1,000 this summer. Like I think
Mhm.
in a similar aspect to that to the summer where we hired Darvin, I think like one wrong misstep, you're like, oh, okay, crap, they might have just blew next season, right? I think that's how important this offseason is that they get it right, that they really scour the market as much as they can and try to add some quality pieces, whether that's 3 stars, whether that's depth throughout, whether that's running it back. I think that's the least intriguing option, in my opinion. Um, they're not blowing it up. So anybody that says, "Hey, let's just start a rebuild," that's not freaking happening. LeBron and AD would both have to say, "Trade me now," which I think by the rumors that AD really wanted Darvin fired, they value a
Yeah.
lot of what AD says. So yeah, it's gonna be. I think this one makes this offseason kind of exciting too, in a way, for the Lakers as somebody that people that cover the team. So yeah, looking forward to it.
That kind of transition into D'Angelo Russell's free agency. I know, again, another pretty hotly debated topic on Twitter or X. Obviously, was not great this postseason. Infamously put up a goose egg, I believe. Was it game three? I believe. Um,
Was it not game? No, game two was the game he was really good in. So yeah, it was game three. Game three, I
game
think, was the
three.
game he sucked.
Yeah, so game one and three was not great. Game two, Gave
Game 2
yourself
and
a
5, was it?
yeah,
He was
2 and
really good.
5, I believe. Um, he was great, but then against the Denver Nuggets, you can't really have
Game 2 and
those
4, sorry.
2 and 4, okay. So not overall, just not a great, performance out of D'Lo, especially against the reigning champions. So that begs the question again, his future's in jeopardy, and the whole mindset last summer was you sign D'Lo to a 1+1, and then you shop him at the trade deadline with the hopes of making a deal to improve the point guard position. That came and went, nothing materialized. DeJounte Murray was there, whether the Lakers wanted to throw in Austin. That was kind of the breaking point, it seemed like. And ultimately, D'Lo stayed on the team. And then you went down the playoffs again, and he kind of put up a stinker. So now you're left with the possibility of him opting out and just walking for nothing.
Yep.
Uh, Again, don't really know if a cap space team like Orlando is going to throw money at him or if he's going to have a market at all, if he's willing to resign. There's just a lot of question marks surrounding D'Lo right now. So, personally, from where do you stand with D'Lo? Are you willing to sign him to like a 1 year kind of 20-ish $1 million deal or similar to what he signed, a 1+1? Or are you just comfortable with him walking away for nothing?
I will say this because I've seen some people in my mentions say, Sean, you're an idiot. You know, you don't understand the market for D'Lo or whatever. And I'll just say this, right? If D'Angelo Russell, because I've had people tell me that D'Lo's market is a mid level, I'm like, all right, I call BS. If D'Lo's market truly is a mid level exception, he opts into his contract tomorrow,
Yeah.
like just flat out. And I want that. I mean, you should want that as a Laker fan, right? D'Lo opting in, it's a good thing simply because you retain the asset and you have another tradable contract on your roster now.
Yep.
Like D'Lo opting in is a good thing. So I don't want D'Lo to opt out because I think if D'Lo opts out, I truthfully feel like D'Lo opting out means that he knows that he has at least a similar market elsewhere, right? Maybe it's not 18.5 million or whatever his contract is currently. But it's close enough with maybe a better opportunity for a real 1 minute, not dealing with not I don't say the word dealing, not playing with Braun and Austin where they can steal some of his on ball kind of point guard or just primary ball handler minutes and responsibility, stuff like that. Um, I ultimately do kind of just anticipate D'Lo opting out. I don't know where he goes, and I guess that's the question people want me to answer. I don't know where he ultimately ends up, but I think D'Lo does ultimately opt out. Whether that's to even just come back and re-sign, maybe, and you try this whole thing over again at the deadline next year, or he just walks away from nothing. I just still have a hard time really picturing D'Lo opting in, even though like we already mentioned, that would ultimately be a good thing for the Lakers, and that would actually give me more optimism about this roster build because if D'Lo opts in, that's another tradable contract. You can kind of make Austin more not untouchable, but you can kind of get really strict, if you will. Maybe there's a better word for that I just can't think of right now. More strict about what deal you would potentially throw Austin in. Whereas if D'Lo opted out and you need extra salary, it's almost guaranteed to be Austin. You can get more strict, like I said, with that. So I think D'Lo opting would be a great thing. I do anticipate him though opting out, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I believe if he opts out, the Lakers get the MLE, correct?
I think if he opts out, yeah, I think it's something along those lines. I think it's something else. I think it's D'Lo opting out and one other thing happening. I think, but that could just be right by itself.
Okay. So, yeah, that'll be interesting. But yeah, I feel like with D'Lo, it's going to be very interesting. I can see why he could opt out, and then does he really want to go down that same road again, signing a short term deal and just dealing with all the rumors again? I don't
Exactly.
know, but yeah, it's going to be. I have a hard time believing he's going to be willing to resign. Again, if he does opt out, I'm very intrigued to see what his market's like for sure. And then flowing into another pretty pending free agent, but assuming that things go the right way, LeBron James is a free agent who's expected to opt out, but sign a mega re-sign with the Lakers for 2 to 3 years, depending on how he's feeling. But with LeBron's free agency, we saw him at the Cavs game courtside. I think LeBron trying to apply some pressure with the Lakers front office, which I argue he hasn't done enough from his different stops along his career. He's kind of infamously been on shorter term deals. So it always puts pressure on front offices to make the right moves, continue to improve the team. So, from LeBron's free agency, what are you looking to see from him? Do you think he's going to take his time and wait to see what comes along with this roster? Or do you think it's just a foregone conclusion? Regardless of what the roster looks like, he's going to be wearing the purple and gold next season.
I I would be really, really surprised if LeBron walks. I think they would have to severely jack up this offseason for LeBron to not be a Laker next season. Um, Contract wise, I expect like a 1+1 from Braun personally. It just
Okay.
gives them the option to maybe call it quits at the end of next season, right? While also still like retaining the leverage, like stuff like saying, "Hey, kind of like you mentioned, hey, I'll dip if we don't do something, right?"
Mhm.
Just keep the power in on his court. Um, and yeah, that's honestly what I'm anticipating. Braun's a way easier player, I think, to break down their offseason situation with compared to D'Lo because I can't even describe to you how badly the Lakers have to like mess up this summer for Bron to
Right.
realistically walk. Because you have that rumor about Utah targeting Bronny like 32, I think, and that got some buzz. I'm like, fam, Bron's not up and leaving LA
No.
to go to mother freaking Salt Lake City. With all due respect
No, definitely not.
to the great city of Salt Lake City in Utah. There's just no shot, right? So if he gets drafted, if Bronny gets drafted by Detroit, fifth overall. Bron is saying, "All right, kid, love you. Call me if you need anything. Pack your bags, beat it. I am staying here." He's not leaving LA for anything. There's only a few teams that have the cap space too to do it. Philly is the one team to look out on. I think you've heard them a lot with a lot of the other big name free agents, most notably Paul George. That's the one team where I'm like, okay, desirable destination in terms of like city, desirable destination in terms of the mindset of the front office where they are very much in a win now window. Desirable destination in terms of the talent that's already there and the coaching. Nick Nurse, the great coach, and Bede and Max are superstars and stars in their own right. Um, that's the only other team where I'm like, okay, if the Lakers were to like jack this up, Philly could make it enticing. But at the end of the day, I really think Braun returns on a 1+1 kind of deal, and they load up the boat and try to win a championship in LeBron's final 2 years. In my opinion, I think he has 2 more years left.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there. And then you kind of talked about the front office. I know a lot of people aren't very fond of it. Um, just kind of want to get your thoughts on Rob Palinka. I asked Anthony the same question. He talked about the shortcomings of Rob Palinka. Definitely
Mm-hmm.
had some great moments,
Mm-hmm.
especially last year's trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
But just overall, with reviewing this entire season, does Rob Pelinka deserve a little more blame for the shortcomings of just getting eliminated in the first round? And how optimistic are you that he's going to be able to press the right buttons heading into this free agency? And you can argue he's already not doing that if they hire JJ Redick.
Rob Palenka is a very weird person to talk about because I think honestly the talk about Rob Palenka is very lopsided, where it's one side is, oh man, he's awesome. He doesn't get enough credit. All right. And then there's the other side where it's on the Rob Pelinka sucks, that he should be fired right along with Darvin Ham. And honestly, my opinion on Rob Pelinka somewhere lies in between the middle.
Yeah.
With free agency, I think Rob Pelinka's experience as an agent really helps him out in this example. Because I think honestly, if we were to just remove all like outcomes and biases aside or whatever, right? If we are being objective, you look at the was it five off seasons that he's been a GM. You have the championship year, the year after, the Westbrook year, the year after, and then last year, right? So that's five.
Yeah.
So going in the sixth year. He's what had four. We'll just call it three because the Westbrook, the year after the Westbrook summer was such a hard free agency period where they had very limited assets. We'll just call it three. The championship year, we all regard that as a really good offseason from
Yes.
Rob and free agency period. The next year, everybody and their mama was saying the Lakers got better in free agency with all the stuff they had did, bring in Trez, stuff like that, Marcus All, things of that nature. We all said they got better, and I will die on the hill that they go back to back. If Bron and AD don't get hurt, damn you, Solomon Hill. And then obviously horrendous offseason the year after. The Westbrook
Yup.
trade, massive overcorrection, was not needed. Yeah, just was not needed. Right. The summer after that, they wanted to do the Buddy Hield and Turner trade, it seems, and Jeannie kind of just said, no, don't really feel it. We're just gonna go from there. And I thought like I said, they had so little assets to work with that I don't think you can really grade that offseason appropriately. Like it was just a whatever offseason. I don't love that we used the full taxpayer on Lonnie Walker, and kind of ultimately because we did that, we wound up not being able to offer Max Christie a third year on his deal, which I think is going to bite them in the butt at the end of the day, but neither here nor there. And then I thought heading into this summer, we were all like, okay, that's a pretty good offseason. Maybe we want to add another big or stuff like that, another bruiser type of big rather. But I thought, generally speaking, the thought process from the fan base was, okay, that was another good offseason, right? So
Mhm.
we're 3 out of 4 because I'm gonna like invalidate one of the off seasons. Like as a free agency guy and getting quality contracts in the building for the most part, like Kendrick Nunn sucked. Um, the Gabe Vincent experience hasn't been great, but I think in terms of just value, you got Malik Monk in 1 year. I mean,
Mhm.
even Lonnie had some really good moments where like you've gotten Torian, I think as a player was fine. Darvin just freaking started him,
Yeah.
which was the real problem there. Um, there's been good moments, but I think the two biggest things I think you have to be critical of Rob Pelinka on is number one, the ability to just, and using a baseball analogy here, just get on base. Like it's double homer or strike out with Rob to a certain extent, where it's going back to the Max Christie contract thing. Dude, just take the walk that the pitcher's trying to give you here. Why are we swinging at 65-mile-per-hour curveballs way outside the zone? Just take the walk, get on base, and save some money from the Lonnie deal, because there's no way you can convince me Lonnie needed all 6.4 million or whatever it was. Save a little bit of money from that so you can give Max the third year. Stuff like that, where you're like, man, dude, just get on base. What are we doing here? Right? Like, why are we swinging?
Mhm.
And then the other thing, I think, just the coaching process in general, where I think it's brutally obvious that, and maybe this is more like even above Rob, the way the Lakers handle their coaching process has been flawed for a really freaking long time. Like post Phil
Yes.
Jackson, where everybody that comes through the door, hopefully until this cycle, well, if it's JJ still, it's would be included in this. Everybody that comes through the door has Laker ties. It's like, bro,
Yep.
okay, that's cool, but that that's not ideal. I mean, Frank is the one example where I think they went differently from that, but that one was such an anomaly because you botched it, because
Yeah.
you should have had Ty, and then you botched Frank so much at the end that you screw yourself out of Quinn Snyder. And that's why you did have to end up with Darvin, because Quinn Snyder said, no, I don't want anything to deal with that, because you fired your head coach at the freaking press conference. Like, what are we doing? So the way that Rob's kind of handled the coaching situation, that's another reason why I have no optimism with this hiring process. Um, the way he's handled that, the way they can't find consistent ways to just like get the easy stuff done, like that's where I think I have the most problem with Rob Pelinka. And then again, like last offseason, last trade deadline, like you look at what some of these other teams were able to get. It's like, oh man, like would have appreciated just a little bit more aggressiveness in trying to get a deal done. But yeah, it's frustrating. Rob definitely deserves some blame to actually answer the question.
Yeah, for sure. And you're saying it with Dallas right now. The marginal moves are paying off, and that's what the Lakers did last trade deadline, and now they're unfortunately out of the postseason. So to just one last question, just picking your brain on this. Assuming D'Angelo Russell walks. Lakers have access to the MLE. Are there any players on your mind at this point in time? I know Jonas Valanciunas has been brought up a little bit. I'm kind of intrigued by him, but obviously, the Lakers played him off the floor in three
Yeah,
minutes in that regular season finale. But
yeah.
just in terms of being a big body off the bench, assuming the Lakers can't find any for a minimum. I think it could be a pretty intriguing fit, assuming they're able to get the full Emily. But just outside of that, are there any players that you've looked at that have caught your attention as free agency's kind of a little over a month away?
Not really. I also haven't put a ton of thought into it quite yet. Down
Mhm.
shoots will be fun. I don't love the idea of using the full Emily on him. I would like to ideally split that with somebody else. Who else? I don't know. Again, I haven't put too much thought into it. Still very much like focus on the draft and stuff right now. I don't know how much this guy's going to cost you, but I mean, obviously, you could luck your way into getting a guy like a Derrick Jones Jr. for the full MLE, who's been freaking
Yeah.
great for Dallas. Um, yeah, like those would just be like the two names that immediately pop out to my head. Derrick Jones Jr., if he wants the full Emily here, you can have it. And Jonas, I'm like, yeah, all right. Well, let's see if we can maybe give you 7 million of that or 6.5 or whatever. Let's split it with somebody else. So I don't know. It's interesting. Very intrigued to see. Again, this is gonna be a fun offseason in general in terms of what direction this team goes in. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Alrighty, and then just to wrap things up, leave us with, I know we kind of hammered Rob Link a little bit, so just leave us with some optimism heading into the summer. How do you think this whole thing's going to wrap up?
How do I think this whole thing's gonna wrap up? I think it wraps up with them getting JJ. But if we want optimism. I think you're still in a better spot than a lot of teams are because you have LeBron AD. And I think you have LeBron AD, you get the right dude in here. While it's gonna be a challenging roster build, it's not an impossible roster build. You just have to make sure that you do your due diligence and get the right deals done. Like I said, free agency is typically a period where Rob does do a better job in, although some of the full MLE guys haven't exactly panned out for you, which is unfortunate. But I think Braun, AD, you get the right coach in here, you build out the roster appropriately. Like you can very easily get back into the top tier of contention in the NBA just based off that core. You just have to nail the offseason.
Yeah, for sure. Very valid points. So, going to be very interesting to monitor the rest of the summer. It's going to be very eventful, and sounds like the head coaching search could be somewhat close to an end. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. But that'll do it for this episode of the Basketball Banter Show. Thank you for listening. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe. I'll leave all of Sean's links in the description down below. Feel free to check him out and his channel as well, the Sports Headline Show. A lot of great stuff and content over there. And yeah, thank you for joining me today. It was a lot of fun talking hoops.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on.
And I will see you guys next week.